Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Who Am I? If you're one of my regular listeners, well, first of all, you don't actually exist. I don't think I have any regular listeners. I have somebody occasionally who looks at something, but my last bunch of things were not listened to, so we'll see. Hopefully that will change, but that's not really why I do it. That's not why I'm doing it right now anyway. Someday, of course, I would love to have people listen to what I'm saying. But right now, I'm just kind of sorting this out for myself, asking the question. It's a good question to ask. And I have sensed all my life this vast well of it's like little pieces of evidence that are echoing something bigger just beyond my view, my little specific view of my little patch of humanity. I have always sensed that there's this big, vast pool of information where it all is, you know? You find yourself there every once in a while and you go, oh, yes, I remember this place. I remember this place. I know where I am. This place will always be here, even when I get lost again. And then you get lost and you forget all about that place that exists. It's always there. What it is, I believe. So we're going to jump right into answering some of these questions. Who am I? What I think that place is I think it's universal consciousness. And it's always there. And it always has everything in it. Just by the name, by the way the name sounds, you can tell what it is. Universal consciousness. It's a place when you find yourself there and an awareness of being there because your information's there all the time. But are you there? Are you consciously there, or are you consciously somewhere else? But when you find yourself back there, you go, oh, yes. This is who I am. This is where I am. Oh, wait a minute. What has happened here? Hold on one second. I got confused. I could see that my recording had been, the stop recording had been pushed but hadn't been confirmed. So it hadn't stopped, but I didn't know whether I was supposed to be throwing this take away or where am I? Not just what am I, where am I? What am I doing? Who am I? Who am I? There is as many ways to answer that question as there are individuals on the planet, in the universe, actually. Who am I? Because even the non-humans can ask that question, but they probably won't. But let's just assume we're talking about humans. There's about 8 billion ways to answer that question, and yet there is a collective answer because there's a collective story that's going on, a collective picture that we all share. It's just that each one of us is sharing that same story of humanity from a different spot on the grid. And it makes a difference. That different spot on the grid for every one of us makes a profoundly different answer for each and every one of us. And yet, there is a common answer that we all share. We are humanity. We are a single species, a single being, if you will, moving through time, pedagogically maturing and flowering, and then assuming, presumably, although not necessarily, fading. We think we're fading. It's because we haven't figured out how to be here sustainably yet. But with my help and with your help, I think we can get there. I think we can get to a place where we realize that we do understand how to be here. Collectively, we do understand. Now, a lot of it comes from our religious traditions and our religious wisdom, and as we look at each other in our different religions, we look at the other religions and go, man, look how stupid you're being here. You're just not seeing that this doesn't make sense, or whatever. The answer is that it's where everyone's religious instinct is pointing to the truth about who we are. I always, almost every day, I bring up the story of the blind men and the elephant because it's a perfect analogy for this. In this case, the elephant is a deep, profound, even religious understanding of who am I and what is the allness that I swim in. That's basically the religious question. Who and what am I? And how do I relate to the wholeness, the allness that surrounds me? That's basically the religious question. Now, they don't couch it that way. They spin it in all kinds of different ways. On different frequencies, but that's basically the question, and that's the question that we're asking here. Who am I? Who am I as an individual being, as a biotechnology, as a species, as we are, the species of humanity? Who am I from all of that? Who am I specifically? Because each one of, I'm going to talk a lot about our collective nature and how really cool it is. And when you pop your eyes open and realize how cool the allness that we are swimming in, how cool that is, sometimes you might have a tendency to quit looking and marveling at your individual specific instance of humanity. That would be a mistake. It also it's a slippery slope to a trap that we don't really want to go down, because the truth of the matter is the value in the individual being is huge. It does not diminish next to the all. Well, it diminishes in a way, but you know what? The allness is so big and so cool. And our individual selves, our individual pieces of it, are so specific and cool. And frankly, it is the vehicle you're driving. It is the interface between you and the experience. And that's not quite the right way to say it, because it is your experience. It's your instrument of experience. Really important. Your individual self. Now, a lot of the cultures that end up being, everything's for the state, sacrifice everything for the state is everything because the collective is the only thing that matters. That is the slippery slope. That's the problem. When you get into that kind of a place, nothing matters but the state, and the individuals are, die screaming, usually, in a state like that. The only one who matters in that case is the autocrat at the top of the ticket. And actually, I think we should have a little discussion about autocracy and about let's see if I can find my own individual way of discussing this topic for obvious and yet not baldly stated reasons. We need to be thinking about the subject of authoritarian psychosis. Now, that actually is going to end up playing into the rest of the conversation, because when we ask the question, who am I? We're asking, as a general human being, who am I? We're asking, each of us individually asks very specifically, who am I? We do ask the question, who are we? We're going to ask the question, what the hell is reality and how does it come into being? We're going to try to offer some tiny pieces of the puzzle. You're going to be seeing the puzzle from wherever you're standing on the grid. You know, you get to look at it and you get to decide for yourself who you are and what reality is and what the heck is this matrix that we're all expressions of and abiding within, um, made of. There's all kinds of ways to put this, all kinds of language to throw at this, all in an effort to illuminate this great question that keeps on being a good question. Who am I? What is humanity? What is humanity as the new super species? The one that every human being is a cell in the body of this super species, humanity. That's a good question. The fact that there even is this higher consciousness of ourselves, humanity with a capital H. Actually, if you go out and start listening to the different gurus, the different teachers, and there are so many teachers. Every time you think, "Oh my God, I have something, something unique, something," and then you go out there, I'm gonna be a teacher that's gonna enlighten the world, and you go out and you look and you see, oh my God, there's a million teachers. What is this? Is the world starting to become enlightened? And actually the truth is, it is. It is starting to become enlightened, and how fabulous and wonderful that is. And yet on the ground, you're still gonna find a way, if you want to be able to focus in a way where you see plenty of where we are not enlightened. You know, watch the news for a minute. Think about, our political structure, our energy structure, which usually is a great part of my presentation. Now, I have started off into the woods, off across the fields, without actually fully explaining my whole picture. And maybe I need to do that because, quite frankly, I have no regular listeners. Although I do have some listeners who have listened to some previous recordings, so it's not like... And then some of these people are my family who have listened to me yammer on about things for, like I'm the first person to have ever noticed that there's something funny going on. The funny going on I'm talking about has to do with, there is an energy. There is an energy that surrounds us, that is connecting us, that is organizing us, that is informing us, that is, it's a flow, a pattern that's already in place, that us and we and our consciousness has a relationship to. That if you dial into it, you go, oh my God, the universe is alive and I am a living cell in the living universe. And furthermore, humanity is a living organism that is connected to itself. You actually don't have to keep screaming for humanity to be connected on the outside, because on the inside, we are absolutely connected. And as is everything at a very profound, inescapable level, a level of the quantum field. So, what is the quantum field? What do they mean when they talk about quanta? The quantum field. They're talking about the quantized, where you... it's like an individuation point at the smallest level possible in this density universe. The way you get to a Planck, which is one of those quanta, which is, think of it like a pixel, because in our technologically savvy age, everybody knows what a pixel is. And actually look at this. No, that's not the right picture. Space-time pixelization, I think, is the name of the slide. There it is. This is it. Think of it as a pixel. Now, so all of the pixel, it's like we're swimming in a sea of solid pixels. And when they organize, when they start spinning, they become matter. They become materialization. They become protons. They become atoms. There's all kinds of forces that are born at the same time that this matter comes into being. It comes across the event horizon of the 0 point energy field. That's the way I like to see it. But it happens at a particular place in the grid when that bit of atom, that bit of plasma, the plasma that the universe is made of, is these Plancks. And they are solid pack. It's a solid pack plasma. When it goes into spin, when it starts to organize and starts spinning and creates all the forces and whatever, we look at that and say, there is matter. Well, where it isn't spinning, that's just the matrix. That's space-time. And everything is made of that. It's all touching. There's no gaps. There's no spaces anywhere. All of the frequencies are touching one another. There's no disconnection between any of it. It's all, and in its connection, what's happening is as space-time jiggles in its little frequencies, it's it's the jiggle of space-time. As it does that, as it vibrates, because everything's vibration, as it vibrates, it creates this cosmic interference pattern. It's a single frequency that contains all of the information of everything across all the universes. Now there are screening mechanisms that allow for hierarchies of the information to be seen from different locations so that you're not completely overwhelmed with way too much information. All of the information of all of the universe consciously, as you're watching all the beings do all the things that they do, it's too much. You can't process that, but you actually possess all of the information, and you have an aspect of yourself, I believe. It's this inner being thing, this inner being that Abraham talks about, the Holy Spirit that the religious people talk about. It's this feeling, you know that you are connected to this whole thing. This inner being that is you is an aspect of you that is very complex, that is very way more complex than your physical mind perhaps has even begun to be able to think about. For one thing, you probably aren't even trying. You're just looking around at your physical aspect of your physical spot on the physical grid, and you're all bound up in your physical specificity, and you aren't thinking about the fact that actually the information goes from you specific all the way out to you everything and all of the details in between, and you have an aspect of your cosmic vibrational anatomy. It's part of you, but it's part of the whole universe. It's part of everybody else too. It's their inner being is part of my inner being. My inner being is reading what everybody else knows too. That's how come it knows everything. And there's a hierarchy of information how it's reading. So everything on planet Earth is way more in the foreground, if you will, for a human conscious entity than things going on Alpha Centauri and beyond and whatever, for obvious reasons. Because the climate going on your planet is more important to you than it might be passingly interesting, what the climate on the planets of Alpha Centauri might be, but, it's not nearly as important as what's going on planet Earth with the climate, What's actually going on planet Earth is, I shouldn't move this cord around. Because if I get it all working, then I don't want to mess with it in case I get my static problem coming back. So I'm going to pause here for just a second and sort of regroup because we're talking about who am I? We're talking about what is reality and how does it work. We were just there for a second. We were talking about both the pixelization of the universe and what material reality actually is. And I haven't mentioned this morning, we are holographic. The universe is holographic. That's how it's informing itself, all across all the scales, as this cosmic plasma that is everything. The Plancks, the frequencies of the universe, jiggle together. They create this cosmic frequency that contains all the information. You have an aspect of yourself that is capable of reading it. It is connected to both you physically and everything else physically. It is connected to everyone else's inner beings. And what is it actually doing? Well, we're going to talk about a lot of this, and we're going to circle back around at some point and explain what the phenomenon of authoritarian psychosis actually is. When we come back around after we've discussed reality and your actual configuration, the meaning of your emotions, the meaning of your existence, perhaps where we even came from, all of that, we're going to circle back around and weave in and out the meaning of psychology. What is aberrant psychology? What it actually is someone who is not in alignment with their two spinning discs of being. Their source mind and their physical mind are not blending very well. They're way out of alignment. They're way out of whack. Their physical mind is lost in fantasies, perhaps not realizing how actual reality is actually coming into place around them. Now you hear the expression, we create our own reality, and in a real personal way, that seems to be extremely true. Depending on what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling and what impulses I am moving on, how I see the world, all that kind of how I see the object of the exercise. So is the object of the exercise competition or is it cooperation? Which one of those? Which one am I playing off of? It makes a huge difference in how my personal life plays out. And so in that sense, it really looks like I'm creating my own reality. And I am, to that extent. And I actually have a great deal of control over this. And we're going to talk more about this in the chapters when we start discussing divine autonomy and our unconscious force fields that you can get into place so that your mind doesn't have to always be slogging in the mud trying to imagine all the threats and make sure that you know where they are so that you know how do you keep yourself safe. Do you get an intimate knowledge of all the threats that there are and study up on them and make sure that you plan your routes so that you're not anywhere on that sidewalk while Stabby Joe is does his thing? Or actually the best way to do it is to foster a blessed relationship with your inner being, because your inner being knows where Stabby Joe is and knows what's on Stabby Joe's mind, actually. And Stabby Joe actually has great worth and spirit and meaning and love in his heart too. He just is out of alignment, and a great deal of his time he's dangerous. But if you ever run into him, it might be because for some reason, he gets to a point where he's got a question in his mind. He's noticed some things, and his heart is ready to open up, with some information that might turn him from being Stabby Joe to being, Blessed Joseph, the former, crack addict on 42nd Street, who now helps other people to understand who they are and help lift them out of their issues and problems. There is an enormous orchestration going on around us that is blessed and beautiful and conscious and evolving and connected, and the way the idea is to get into resonance with your inner being and start walking its path and start rendezvousing with the rest of the field at a more blessed point. It will create for you a happier life, a more effective life, a more loving and satisfying set of experiences and relationships and all that kind of stuff for you specifically. And then collectively, what it allows the greater pattern of us to organize itself into more harmonious flows, ways where all of us interact with one another in a higher level, at a higher level. So we're going to be talking about all these things. What is the meaning of all of this? We're going to get to a place where we completely understand our neighbor, whether he's in a loving spot or whether he's in an angry, fearful spot. And we're not going to judge anybody anymore because we're all in this together and there is no separation between us. There is no us and them. Human beings did it all. All of the crimes that have been committed by humanity were committed by human beings, of which we are one of those. We did it. We did it. We did it. Now you might say, oh, but I would never hurt anybody. Well, as long as you live in a paradigm where human beings do not know who we are, you are complicit. So indeed, we did do it. We committed the Holocaust. We committed World Wars I and II, and hopefully not III. That's just skirmishes, that persist around the planet because we don't know who we are. And so we ask this question, who am I? Who am I? What kind of a being am I? Where did I come from? What kind of a universe am I living in? What is the meaning of the matrix, the quantum field? How does that matter to me? Literally, how does it matter to me? We're going to discuss over time, we're going to discuss the emergence of matter and the nature of gravity. We're going to discuss the nature of the human mind, because you have your physical mind and then your source mind, and we're going to talk about both of these and their relationship to each other, and our emotions, their relationship to each other, and the meaning of our emotions, our emotional guidance scale, and how we're going to talk about the concept of momentum too, because momentum and law of attraction are the same thing. They are different ways of talking about the same rule that happens when you trot down some path, thinking thoughts, feeling certain feelings. It means you're tagged in. I don't want to say locked in. But the more the momentum gathers, the more locked in you are to a momentum. It's harder to get to you can't just jump right out of a negative momentum, right into a happy, smiley momentum. The frequencies are too different. You have to move your way up the scale, decrease the momentum of the negative until you get into a neutral place where you might be able to shift to a positive, general positive, and then dial into a positive, specific positive. I have this little, where is it? The 4 states of being, 4 general states of being. This is what that is all about. And how, when you are in a negative state, you are out of alignment with your inner being, because your inner being is always positive. It knows full well how grand, how magnificent, and how full of infinite potential the whole field is. And so there's never a negative emotion coming from your self, your vibrational self, who knows what really is. From that person, you will never get a negative emotion, because she knows full well who you are. And who you are is the matrix itself. You are the morphogenetic field who can become anything that you want. And truly, it is being driven by what you want. And so that's why Abraham is always telling you, focus on what you want. You're going to notice what you don't want. You're going to feel negative emotion from this noticing what you don't want. But don't stay there, because don't get lost in that. You're fine. You're fine. You're fine. We're all fine. We're all fine. And I don't care if your mother died yesterday, or if your lover dies tomorrow or leaves you tomorrow, or if the volcano erupts down the street, or if Trump is elected. Whatever, we're all fine. We're fine. And actually, the answer to our problems is just simply to understand who we are. Because the moment we understand who we are and how it works, we can start operating effectively instead of like shadow boxing what isn't real and completely missing what is real. Which brings me to this picture, this slide of mine, pointing out the 5 kleshas of Buddhist philosophy and how what I'm talking about, how it relates to this. It is true. It's sort of like my new take on the kleshas, a dial in, a little bit more specific understanding of the source of all suffering. The source of all suffering from humanity is coming from us not knowing who we are. And that basically translates into us not knowing what's real. Nothing that is real can be hurt. And nothing that is not real exists. And so there you are. That was somebody else's quote. If you don't like that, if I led you into a place where you're misinterpreting that and you go, wow, I don't like that, then I'm sorry. But that wasn't my quote. But the truth of the matter is that we are okay, no matter what. And our safety, our true safety in this incredibly dangerous, scary world of fast-moving change and large-scale developments across the field, and a broad base of plot coming into this. Have you ever read history? And then, dial in from every country, now add it all together. There's an awful lot of things that have happened in the last few thousand years. There's a lot of information to digest. But the good news is you don't actually have to know all of the details of the rolling manifestation. You just need to know how it moves. You need to get a general idea of, oh, that's the setup. Okay, got the setup. I understand what I'm swimming in and what the rules are. Now, line up with your inner being, which means resonate with her, which means find a way to feel okay about this, no matter what's happening to you, Are you a single parent? Are you a wartime refugee? Are you someone coming out of a cult? Are you frightened as hell because you've made your whole life politics and the study of the history of politics, and you know what's going down right now in American politics, and it's making you really nervous? Because you've focused in very clearly on how, in some aspects of this plays out. And it's not pretty, right? Well, if you keep focusing that direction, then it actually is going to... We don't need to focus that way. An understanding of what we're looking at helps. But don't focus that way. Because there is a way out of this. There's a way out of the wilderness. It is to understand what you're looking at. There is no us and them. And I'm sorry, even when you're at the place where you're dealing with Nazis, there still is no us and them. The Nazi is a thing that we become when we don't understand who we are. And when we do understand who we are, then that starts to dissipate. It actually naturally just starts to disintegrate. It isn't something that you should focus on and push against, because when you do that, you actually make it bigger. You add strength to the opposite side of the polarity that you're pushing against. I noticed that in 2016, or just shortly thereafter. I was part of the resistance until I realized that the resistance itself gives um, gives power to the counterpoint, the opposite side of the polarity. So you got to watch out. The enemy is actually not a them. The enemy is actually the polarity in the field. It's a field phenomenon. The polarity itself is the enemy. There is no actual enemy in form that you could point at and say he's the enemy. No, he might be. You might point at somebody who is exhibiting um, the symptoms of polarity, and you go, he's the problem. No, he's not the problem, but he is displaying the problem. He's got the sickness. And Paul Levy would call this sickness Wetiko. He takes this term from Native American use, and it relates to the monster they call the Wendigo or whatever. It's a state of the Native Americans noticed. They really noticed it in the white man that Wendigo or Wetiko disease was a common thing that you notice in the white man. In their own cultures, they would notice it occasionally. Someone who would display this seeming blindness, this psychic blindness. They just could not see the allness. And they had, pathological narcissistic, what is the word? I don't know, but they dubbed it Wetiko disease, and what it is it's being out of alignment. It is out of alignment disease, and I believe the cure in general, across the board, is we need to understand who we are. We really need to understand who we are, because this is going to get out of control, even here in America. Now, I live side by side with neighbors and loved ones, and fellow bowling team, and people who I see in the restaurants and grocery stores. My neighbors, uh, you know, they all seem perfectly reasonable. We've got a good life going on. But there's no guarantee that even in America this good ride is going to last. And if we elect the authoritarian, on the one hand, it isn't going to last. But even if we elect the other guy, if we don't wake up to who we are, then the pattern continues, and next time we get not just one who is a narcissistic mob boss kind of guy, but we get a clever and passionate, what would the word be? Demagogue, a true believer in something, and then carrying this Wetiko disease. And it's going to get really ugly. So never mind all of that. I don't listen to me when I talk about ugly talk. That is just the framework. That's the possibility. That's the length and depth and breadth of what we're facing out there. However, I'm going to tell you what the answer is. The answer is we've got to know who we are. We've got to know who we are. Know thyself, individually and collectively. Who are we? How does this biotechnology work? We're going to brush upon questions of where we might have come from. We'll talk about that just a little bit. We're going to talk about the vibrational nature of the universe itself, and ways to imagine how that is actually true. It really is true. If you dial into an actual atom, or a proton, a bit of matter coming across the event horizon. It's actually manifesting. It's a thing that you can see. When you dial into it from a really teeny weeny perspective, what you're actually looking at is a kind of momentum and vibration that's sort of pulsating right on the edge of, but it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. And what it's kind of doing, I've heard Nassim describe this. It's sort of itself the whole thing, itself the whole thing, itself the whole thing, itself the whole thing. It's winking in a way, and what it's doing is it is informing itself of itself and the rest of the field around it. That's the universe we live in, people, and yet we continue to focus in the darkest places, in the crappiest places. And although the crappy truths that we experience around us are indeed true, and maybe it's not the best thing to completely, it isn't the best thing to completely hide your head in the sand and pretend that reality doesn't exist, still, there are so many wonderful things about reality that you can focus on. I don't understand why we're focusing on the, well, I do understand. We're doing it because we don't know who we are. So, from the five kleshas point of view, from Buddhist philosophy, the root causes of all suffering, not knowing what's real, grasping and clinging to the unreal, being afraid of the unreal and recoiling from it, identifying with an imaginary self. So, your two selves. You are two selves, and I believe that rather than identifying with an imaginary self, your problem might be that you are overly identifying with an expirational self, not realizing that your greater foundational being is actually the quantum field itself and cannot be hurt. You are an eternal self. You are an eternal consciousness connected to the rest of the whole thing, that knows itself, that knows who it is, that is in contact with itself, that is learning about itself through you. Anyway, all of that. So cool, so cool. So when you identify with your expirational self, your meat-based self, not realizing that you are a quantum, a Planck-based self, of course you're going to be concerned and feel vulnerable and feel, well, because have you seen what you're made of meat? Do you know what can happen to meat? Well, when you're focused that way, that's what starts causing a certain amount of suffering starts coming from that. And if you start thinking thoughts, spinning thoughts from that frequency, you can get way down a trail that doesn't have anything to do with your real reality. Your real reality is that you are, now this is another one of my pictures, you are a binary self. You're a binary being. And you are both well, this is the way I look at this. And I found this picture because in my mind, I could see these two spinning discs. I could see the wide open aperture looking at everything. This is your broader perspective, just knows everything. It's drawing from the reality of all physicality because it is in touch with the vibration of this Planck field. It knows where the atoms are. It knows how your blood is flowing, how the wind is blowing, what's moving down the street right now. It knows where, it just knows that. It's drawing from that because it's the part of you that is reading that allness frequency coming in across all your protons. All of your atomic structure is reflecting all of the atoms and all of the rest of the universe and how they're moving. It's just really cool. It's very, 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 very cool. Your inner being really does know what you want and where it is. How does it know what you want? Because your inner being, that eternal aspect that connects all things, what it is desire. And when I don't what's the word? I don't want to say when manipulated correctly. That's not the right way to put it. When looked at correctly, what you're looking for is the win 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 position, and there is one. The object of the exercise is not competition, everything battling to the death against one another, and then whatever manages to survive, the whatever, that's the strong one, and that builds tomorrow's future. It doesn't really work like that. Although sometimes it comes down to little pinpointed moments of that. That isn't really what the picture is. The picture is who can cooperate with the broadest, the most of the field. What can cooperate the most with the most other beings? Who can conceive of the largest win-win-win-win position? Now, you don't have to think of it that way. Most of the other beings around you are not thinking about it that way. What they are doing is, from their own blessed and divine position, they are in faith and in fullness, they are pursuing their own heart. They are pursuing what feels best to them. And in their alignment with their inner being, it feels best to them when everybody else is doing well too. It feels best to live in a thriving ecosystem. That's what feels best. It does not feel good to live in an ecosystem that is gasping for breath, or devoid of other consciousnesses. That doesn't feel good. And if we would truly line up with our own inner being, we'd come to the same conclusion. Selfish interests, when in alignment with your broader perspective, selfish interests include the whole planet surviving. It's not okay for humanity to survive and all else die. That's not okay. For one thing, it's not going to happen because you snip too many of those threads of life, and we're going down with it because we are nature too. We are not outside of nature. We are part of nature. So anyway, you are your two minds. The one on the right is your specific mind. Imagine it dialing in to the specifics of your part, your place on the grid as you look at your loved ones and look at your desires and follow your heart and your life. That's you, specific you. And then you, broader perspective you. Both of these, if you're thinking of these both as minds, they are both perspectives. They're points of view. They're all of that too, but they are minds. A point of view probably creates a mind. It's probably something like that. A consciousness is created by a point of spin. So you are these two minds, your specific self and your source mind self, and your source mind self is always positive, always positive, always positive, and the object of your game is to resonate with your inner being. And if you're negative, that means you are not resonating. It means you're off in the weeds by yourself. And no wonder the world looks so harsh from there. From your negative point of view, the world is a very harsh place, and anything can happen. And what you're displaying as you continue to bang around in your negative state is what you're displaying in full. It's so obvious to the rest of the universe. You are not hiding it from anybody. What's obvious is, at least in that moment, you don't know who you are. Because if you did know who you are, you would not be negative. We are the quantum field. We are so blessed. It's just such a really, really cool setup. It is weighted in our favor every step of the way. Every step of the way. Why doesn't it look like that? because we don't know who we are. We don't know how to play the game. We don't know what our board piece, what it's capable of. And to that service, we're going to be in this space for the next foreseeable future talking about this. Let's see what else is going to be involved. I've covered a lot of what is going to be involved. Now, at some point, I will have to dig deeper into every one of the topics that I brought up, because they all hub back to the same wheel. You know, we're talking about one thing. Who am I? Who am I? And how does this whole setup, this whole cosmic, physical / spiritual / cosmic setup, how does it actually work? How do we get from there to a meaning, the meaning of our own current events? You know, as you look around and you see your neighbors losing their minds, and different things happening, and the problems that humanity faces. One of my greatest points is that I believe that a deep understanding of who we are is going to get us off of fossil fuels, because we're going to realize that there is a source of all energy, that this power that creates worlds, we don't need the fossil fuels. And the kinds of energy paradigms that we keep coming up with are centralized power systems that are centralized energy systems that are creating centralized power systems. And as long as that is true, then we're going to get the kind of problems that we have collectively in our geopolitical atmosphere, in our energy systems, our healthcare systems, our transportation systems, our food growing systems. All of that we're going to have to deal with this who are we collectively issue, because our centralized energy systems are creating the centralized everything else systems. And then that brings us to a place where we have this enormous collective will. And what are we putting that collective will, what are we putting our heads together to accomplish with that collective will? Well, the greatest thing that we seem to be able to put our heads together to create in our collective will is a $800 billion, almost $1 trillion of collective will spent every single year towards the war machine and everything that has to do with that. Now, you might argue that there's a whole lot of benefit that comes from that, because through this system of the military-industrial complex, we have the space program, and all kinds of technologies are created that then benefit humanity. Well, what has happened since last century is a whole lot of the really, really good, juicy stuff has gone underground to the black ops, and on the surface, we're doled out the mediocrity, the crumbs at the surface, so that we stay compliant, so that the real juice and the real power is kept by, and it's time for us to break out of that. And my answer is not to start pointing at conspiracies, because there's plenty of conspiracies all around us. There's people conspiring everywhere for all kinds of reasons. I am absolutely a conspiracy theorist. However, I do not, and I just said that, don't somebody take that out of context. I actually am not a conspiracy theorist, because there is no us and them. It's all us. We are all co-conspirators to this travesty afoot at the moment. And the answer is a relatively simple one. The answer is we need to know who we are. We need to know what we're actually dealing with. We need to know where our power is and where it isn't. We don't need to focus on where it isn't. We do need to focus on where it is. We need to understand our vibrational universe and how we do create our own reality individually, and how collectively we are creating our collective reality, how that works. What aberrant psychology is, that it's just these two minds out of alignment. Someone's gone negative and they're acting on their negative impulses. They're entranced by the manifestation twinkling in front of them, or raging, or whatever. They're transfixed on a negative. They're emitting a negative frequency. They're taking impulses from that skewed position, and their rendezvous, their cues that they're getting, their impulses they are getting from the universe, is skewed the way they're looking at it. It's not pure. The universe is positive. If you're negative, then you've got a frequency in your mix that you need to line up differently. I don't know. We're going to talk about all that stuff too. And how our collective, as well as our individual understanding of who we are and what's really happening in truth and reality. Where is, we're going to go with this one too, the origin of mass and the nature of gravity. And the math has been done, people. Our relationship to the rest of the universe is mathematically understood. Our relationship to source energy is actually mathematically understood. Here's the full abstract of that that peer reviewed. It's still probably under review from all the peers who are the physicists and mathematicians who look at this paper and are scratching their head, trying to put it all together, going, "Oh man, is that what you're saying?" We're going to talk about where this, I showed this slide earlier, I show it every day. We're going to talk about where that neocortex comes from. That aspect of your human mind that actually makes you human might very well be a product of genetic modification. This is the article I draw from, in this case, written back in 1991, talking about how human chromosome number 2 is a fused chromosome. It very much looks like genetic modification on this. What happened is two chromosomes fused together, telomere to telomere, which telomere is, by its very definition, is the outside of chromosomes. It would never be on the inside. And yet when you look at human chromosome number 2, there's this telomere material on the inside. It's two chromosomes that have fused together, telomere to telomere, with redundancies. So you have both of these chromosomes have some things that are the same, right? You fuse them together, and now this oneness doesn't need the redundancies. So redundancies on both sides of this were clipped away, which stabilized the fusion. And then on top of that, what it created was the human neocortex. Now, this article is saying, this is the full abstract, it says, "We conclude that this is the relic of an ancient telomere to telomere fusion and marks the point at which two ancestral ape chromosomes fused to give rise to human chromosome number 2. Now, as far as I know, the people who published this article did not have an agenda of their own. I don't think they were trying to prove anything, except that, hey, when you look at this chromosome, it looks fiddled with. Other than that, I don't think that they were concluding, and they came from Alpha Centauri, or they were from the Pleiades, or, whatever. You'll find plenty of people over on Gaia who might be studying where our ancestors may have come from. But looking at this chromosome, it definitely looks like this might be genetic modification. And when it would have happened would have been about 200,000 years ago, when what we now call anatomically modern humans, when they appeared upon the planet. Before that, we called it Cro-Magnon man. They don't call it that anymore, probably because it's too hard to pronounce. And it's an ambiguous term. Nobody really knew what that meant. It probably had to do with where some bones were first discovered, you know. Anyway, so my full program is going to also discuss that mathematical paper. I have captured some slides from the YouTube full presentation of this mathematical paper. It's 37 minutes long. I'm going to post a link to that YouTube video in my today's video. Unless you're a mathematician or a physicist, you may not understand what you're looking at. But what I want you to understand is that the mathematics have been done. And there are people out there, mathematicians and physicists, who understand what this is saying. The enormity of what this is saying, the implications of what this is saying, the implications of what this is saying to both the potential for future energy production and also gravity control. That's the two big things, the two big kahunas. The big pieces of meat in this presentation have to do with the implications to what we can do with reality as far as energy production and gravity control. So at any point, if I show any slide that looks interesting, you can stop the video and look at it. One thing that you can see is as these quantum oscillators, as they come into being, very interesting. This one is showing the relationship between the Planck structure within the proton and all of the protons in all the rest of the universe. This one I actually captured from the paper, not from the video presentation. This one shows you where the Planck unit even comes from, how you mathematically discover it's a photon going at the speed of light. A photon is a packet of light, so you expect it to go at the speed of light, crossing its own energy, its own diameter. It's really, really small. Really, really, really small. There's a lot of them packed into every proton. And as these Planck oscillators come into spin, they come into coherence, they come into spin. Well, as they come into being, as they come into matter, they are spinning. You can't separate spin and matter. The spin is what's causing the manifestation that we call matter. It's causing that little a proton is a little tornado of ether spinning. Ether, the Planck field, this divine matrix that we're all made of. Anyway, so we'll be talking about that too a little bit more. Now I've kind of, in a general way, I've covered the whole length and breadth of what I'm trying to say. I guess the punchline to all of this is that all is well. You are fine. We are fine. But if we don't get a grip on the understanding of who we are and how material manifestation actually works, we are going to be heading down a bumpy trail. Politically, at least. Geopolitically. Across the planet, we are at odds with humanity, the way we conduct our business being, we love to transport ourselves around the planet and visit each other. We love that. So our transportation systems and the way we produce food, our mega agricultural systems. Let's see what else. our energy systems in general, they are all at odds with the planet. And they don't need to be. As a matter of fact, if we don't pull those into alignment, we are all in for a really bumpy ride. But a bumpy ride, you could have said that back in 1941. We're in for a really bumpy ride. But we made it across that. But, tell that to somebody who was actually at one of those camps. Hey, everything was fine. That's just us, growing pains. Well, it actually is growing pains. It was us way not understanding who we are. It was the people who weren't Nazis looking at people who were Nazis, thinking that it's so black and white, it's so cut and dry, you are the enemy and I am just fine. But if you go back and watch good period pieces and study the history of what actually happened during World War II, you will realize that a great deal of that ugly, awful spirit that sort of coalesced into the Nazi Party and became that horrible war machine that tried to enslave the world, you will also realize that there was plenty of that ugly, awful spirit scattered on the side of the Allies, too. That spirit is what the problem was, and how it was able to fully organize into physicality before we could understand what the heck it was that was happening. It's like, think of it like a god or a demon, that is rising from, and it's pulling all of us into its form. And as far as we evince or carry those frequencies of darkness, as in negative emotion, angry, frightened, blameful, shameful, guilty, accusatory, whatever, any of the states of negative emotion, when they start to coalesce, they become a storm of this negative emotion. What's going on with, I believe, a lot of the answer to what's going on in politics right now is one of the parties is sort of the amalgamation of all the grievances, the being pissed off at people, at angry at and poking fun, and I don't know, it's negative emotion gathering together in a storm that is going to cause some damage, I fear, if we don't understand what it is. And I do believe that is the answer to all of our problems, to understand more fully who we are. Who am I? Who am I? And then from there, who are we? What is this biotechnology that I am driving, that I am in charge of? What is universal consciousness? I think we started with universal consciousness. What's that? If you're raised in a paradigm of superstitious nonsense, you're raised with some cosmology, shall we say, that doesn't actually fit how reality really does come into being, then when you stumble your way into universal consciousness, you might imagine that you are the only one there. And drawing from that universal consciousness, as you focus in on it and believe it and see it and know it, but believe also that you are the only one there, then you think everyone else is wrong. You start getting a sense of your own, an overinflated sense of your own power physically on the outside, actually. We're going to discuss all of that because all of it matters. All of it matters. Now, from my point of view, one of my greatest hopes is that somebody somewhere who knows something about any of this will listen to my program and get excited about the possibility, the real possibility of human beings getting off fossil fuel. I'll tell you how come there's a possibility that we will get off of fossil fuels is because in actual fact, we We really have to, or we will die. And I don't believe that we're going to die. I don't believe that humanity is going to pass away. We have 8 billion minds right now working on the situation. Now, a lot of people they've forgotten they're supposed to be working on the problem, and they're off doing their own thing, and they forget that we are a we. But out of 8 billion people, there are still a lot of people that are working on this. And more, our physical necessities are going to pull more and more people in. We have a lot of problems going on right now on planet Earth. A lot of people will point to our climate issues. We've got cities, modern cities on the planet right now that are so hot you can't really even live in them anymore. They are air conditioning the streets now because it's so hot you can't. I read that yesterday. I think that's Kuwait City is the one that they're talking about. But increasingly, places like Phoenix are going to be harder and harder to live in. You know, where when you walk out of your door and down the street, and, man, in the summer you wilt. It's hot. It's hot. It's hot. What is this climate change stuff going on? Well, what I believe is going on is two things. We are in a moment of planetary cyclical climate change that has to do with cosmology, has to do with the phases of the Earth, where we are in the galaxy, what energies that we're getting from, we're in a cyclical pattern on the one hand. For jillions of years, the planet went in and out of ice ages that and into hot phases, melting, warming, and cooling phases that had nothing to do with human beings. And probably even specifically any one species of being on the planet. Probably didn't have anything to do with that. And we are in the middle of one of those. Greg Braden will point to one of those. There is a lot of scientific evidence that a lot of the warming that we are experiencing is not of our making. However, we are exacerbating the problem with the way we are tearing down the threads of life that help ameliorate and support, help cushion that, would help us survive it. We're tearing those things down. We're making the climate problem worse. And the biofield poisoning of the planet is probably worse. The destruction of the rainforest, the poison that belches forth from everything from the lithium battery mines to the uranium mines to the things like what happened with the Deepwater Horizon great oil spill in the Gulf, and then the millions of gallons of crap that we poured over the top of that to make sure that oil did not come to the surface but rather sank down into the sea, and all of the horrible destruction that happened from that within our blessed seas. No, you know what? I'm starting to get a negative momentum myself. The answer, people, is the way out of the wilderness is we need to know who we are. We need to know where our strength is. We need to know where our power is. We need to know where our eternity is. We need to know where our connection is, our connection to one another. And our connection actually lies in the fact that we are holographic. The universe is holographic. Mathematically, it is holographic. In physics, it is holographic. It is transmitting and transferring the wholeness of all of its information across all the scales, all the time, through the quantum field. That, we're going to unpack that in future episodes. I may be pointing at this episode if anybody wants to have a general idea of what my general presentation is. It is, we need to understand ourselves, and from that understanding of ourselves will come all the blessings, all the blessings of oneness and allness, and your understanding of your divine autonomy, your ability to navigate this on your own. You don't need the rest of the field to understand this in order for you to be able to start your own momentum of positivity. What's the answer? Resonate with your inner being. Resonate with your inner being, because your inner being is the part of you that is in touch with all things. The part of you that knows who you are, that knows who your neighbor is, and loves you both, no matter how much you hate each other. Knows the value of both of you, knows the bigger picture of both of you. It's the one that knows what you want, and knows where what you want is. And so resonate with your inner being. Follow her guidance. What does that mean? Care how you feel. She always feels good. If you want to resonate with her, you got to feel good too. Which means quit taking thoughts that are small, that are demeaning, that are less than, that are disparaging against you or others. And it doesn't even matter how bad they are. Focus on something different. You can know, oh, I see you. I see the potential there. Oh my God, you're a Nazi. I see how bad we've let it get. But I still know who you are. You are part of me, and I am a part of you. We are one. And I'm not advocating sacrificing yourself for anybody or anything. Stand up for yourself. But don't push against anything. Your resistance is what's making the evil persist. Your pushing against it is actually giving it power. You are transmitting energy to it when you touch it, push against it, and think negative thoughts. Don't do that. You're adding to the polarization when you do that. And I'm not saying that these people aren't completely off the rails and crazy. They are. We are. But it is our understanding of who we are that is going to help us out of this pickle that we find ourselves in. I will discuss cymatics briefly, not today. I do that every day. Cymatics is just a way for me to help illustrate how to understand we really do live in a vibrational universe. And so that's the whole presentation. I could do a seminar. Actually, that is probably just an intro to the seminar that includes all of those topics. And in the end, where we get to in the end, individually, you'll be stronger. You will know who you are and your place in this world. Nothing can be left out, and no one can be left out, and that includes you. We are all here for a reason. For a reason, creation does not make mistakes. And we are all a great cosmic oneness with one another. So the allness really matters, but we don't sacrifice the individual to the allness. They are both really important. You are really important. You cannot subtract the individual in order to understand the whole. It doesn't work that way. So with that, I'm less than an hour and 20 minutes into this, but I feel like I have said a wholeness for today. Tomorrow I will pick it up. I may try to do in general the whole program again, or I may start dialing in to the specific parts. Talk about the mathematics of the emergence of mass and the nature of gravity. Talk about the law of attraction and how your focus and attention is actually, focus and attention in general is the currency of the universe. Period. And how does that work? And how is desire running this whole thing? And when you're trying to align with your inner being, how does I just lost that because I of course looked and see what that text was. My husband just teed off 40 minutes late because of a frost delay. That makes sense. Interesting. I wonder if it frosted in my backyard. I hope not, because I did not protect those plum cots back there, and I really want to see some plum cots this year. Anyway, he's playing Ladera. Maybe it's colder over there. In the end, I want us to understand our divine autonomy, our divine individuality. We are so blessed, each individual, and we all matter, and you can't subtract us. When you start trying to do that, you get into terrible trouble. Subtraction consciousness can lead to great wickedness. I believe that the final solution of the Nazis was a ultimate example of how far that stupid subtraction consciousness can go, and how wicked it can actually get. Oh, if we just subtract this thing out of the picture that exists, let's just erase it, it'll be fine, and then the rest of it forms a wholeness and it'll be great. No, you can't subtract anything. This is a universe of addition, not subtraction. And anyway, we'll unpack more of this in the days to come. If you started with me today, I sure as heck hope that I will see you in the audience tomorrow. I have no idea who, if anybody is listening. I actually, eventually, I can see when people watch, because I get how many views. Oh, that has views. Ooh, somebody watched that. I do not know who it is. So in case it's you out there, know that I can't see you, but I really appreciate you. If you're out there listening to me, I love you. I appreciate you, and I hope I can see you back here tomorrow, or maybe in the days to come, or share it with your friends. Maybe somebody else might be more interested in this than you are. But in any case, I come into the space just to practice for myself. Ask the question for myself. Who am I? Who am I? I'm getting ready to be, doused in this crazy political situation unfolding here in America for the rest of the year. It's going to be pretty interesting. Even if the autocrat loses, we still need to know who we are, because the other party is quickly morphing into a sort of a soft version of the same problem. And if we dodge this bullet, until we understand where those bullets are coming from, there's just going to be more and more of them to dodge. So, with that cheery note, I promise you that knowing who we are is the answer, both individually and collectively. It will help you individually understand your strength, your power, your blessings, your place in the universe, your eternity. All of that will help you understand that, and collectively it will help guide us more gently, more easily to a place of sustainability across the board, and playful, joyous interaction with the rest of the biofield on this planet. I can hardly wait. And so until tomorrow, I wish you the best. Wish you the best. I was trying to avoid saying something terribly corny as my sign-off, and instead I said something grammatically stupid. So I'll just go back with, until tomorrow, may the source be with you.